Wrestling history is littered with individuals being taken off of television for a while in order to return with a totally different persona, a totally different gimmick. There can be a whole host of reasons for this. Either the performer has grown stale in their previous role, or a certain pop culture trend has caught the eye of Vince McMahon. Just wait for Vince to hear about that new Game of Thrones show, and the ECW zombie might get his old job back. Repackaging a wrestler can be incredibly successful. I mean, Kane was a lot better than a bloody evil dentist. But many repackagings do little more than cause the finger to head to the scalp and commence scratching. With that in mind, I'm Adam Wilborn from What Culture, and these are 10 of the strangest repackagings in WWE history. Number 10. Leo Kruger becomes Adam Rose. Leo Kruger was something of a staple in NXT and had seemingly been in WWE developmental forever. Kruger was a big game hunter and mercenary, albeit one with questionable mental facilities. The Kruger gimmick wasn't gaining any traction, however, and the decision was made to tweak it somewhat. And by that, I mean spin the wacky wheel of gimmicks. The logical route, thankfully, was taken, and the South African big game hunter became a Russell Brand-esque party animal called Adam Rose. How you go from South African mercenary to British party animal, I don't really know. Colonialism, maybe? The former loner was now accompanied by the Exotic Express, and the gimmick was wildly popular for all of about 10 minutes. Number 9. The Horseman becomes the Stalker. A member of arguably the most dominant Four Horsemen faction in history, Barry Windham was a huge star in the NWA and WCW. 1996, though, saw Windham back in the WWF, and logic dictates that he'd be billed as, well, Barry Windham, right? Well, 1996 wasn't a time of logic in the World Wrestling Federation, back when the Goon was a thing, so Windham was presented as the Stalker. No, he didn't hang out in bushes outside of people's houses like Jules, but he did wear camouflage paint and was fantastically billed as being from the environment. The gimmick didn't last too long, of course, and before you knew it, Windham was paying homage to his father Blackjack Mulligan in the new Blackjacks. Actually, that didn't last too long either. Number 8. Samoan FATU becomes the Arabian Sultan. Long before he was doing things for The Rock and sticking his pimply buttocks into the poor faces of his opponents, Rikishi was one half of a fairly successful team called the Head Shrinkers, where he was billed as Fatu and teamed with his cousin Samu. Fatu would return with all mention of his Samoan heritage dropped, however. He became the Sultan, a masked villain presumably hailing from wherever you want from the Middle East. He spoke not a word, though, the reason being that his tongue had been cut out. Obviously. It is fair to assume that the Sultan didn't exactly set the world alight, but did somehow work his way into an Intercontinental Championship match at WrestleMania 13 against Rocky Maivia, which he won. No, of course he bloody didn't. Number 7. Headbanger MOSH becomes Beaver Cleavage. Because who in their right mind doesn't want to shag their mum? Right, lads? The Headbangers were a fun little tag team during WWF's Attitude Era, all punk aesthetic and high energy in ring work. The partnership was ended, however, and Headbanger MOSH was repackaged as Beaver Cleavage. The name isn't a great starting point, but young Beaver was given the full vignette treatment before his arrival, and they, well, made things a lot worse, as Beaver was shown at home with his mother, Mrs. Cleavage, saying things like, "Nobody likes a sloppy beaver." The implication, in case you're not getting it, was that Beaver wanted to get his hands on his mother in a fairly illegal and decidedly immoral manner. The gimmick lasted just a few weeks, Beaver defeating Christian of all people in his only match before dropping the gimmick in a promo a couple of weeks later. Poor Christian. When they said you wouldn't be able to move the amount of beaver all over you, I bet you didn't expect this. Number 6. Jim Neidhart becomes who? Jim the Anvil Neidhart had a successful career in the 1980s as one half of the Hart Foundation with Bret the Hitman Hart. But as Bret went from strength to strength in the singles ranks, the Anvil was left floundering. He teamed with Owen Hart for a short while before heading for an even shorter stint in WCW. Neidhart returned to the WWF in 1994, aligning with Owen once more. And Neidhart and Owen had been booked to win the WWF Tag Team Championships at this time, but Neidhart's tendency to know no-show events stopped that from happening. Just a few months later, though, he was back, although not as Jim the Anvil Neidhart. No, Neidhart returned as who?
Why?
No, Simon. Who? A masked wrestler hailing from who knows where. Yeah, it was a one-joke persona that allowed Vince McMahon and Jerry Lawler to ask, who's on first? And not much else. Ha 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 ha. Number 5. Earthquake becomes GOLGA. Earthquake was a staple of the WWF in the early 90s, like bright colors, long hair, and, steroid trials. Earthquake headed to WCW, where he worked under the names Avalanche and The Shark, hailing from the Great Barrier Reef, naturally. But he would return to the World Wrestling Federation in 1998. Not as Earthquake, though, but as GOLGA, the newest member of the faction called the Oddities. Jesus Christ. GOLGA wore a mask, had a cheese puff stuck to his head, and an Eric Cartman t-shirt. That is literally it. In fact, the only real characteristic of the gimmick was that he had a fascination with Cartman and would carry a Cartman doll around with him at all times. I also had the same Eric Cartman doll at the time and, needless to say, wasn't best pleased. Number 4. Paul Burchill becomes a pirate. Paul Burchill was one of, many missed opportunities in WWE in the mid-2000s. He made his debut in 2005 by aligning with countryman William Regal, because in professional wrestling, all British people get along. We don't. We fight like cat and dog in the What Culture office. But Regal became something of a mentor to Burchill until the team eventually split fairly amicably. But just a week after going their separate ways, Burchill returned as a pirate. Yes, this was Pirates of the Caribbean time. I mean, when it was good, of course. And it was revealed that Burchill's ancestry traced back to Blackbeard himself. He would elaborately enter the arena by swinging in on a rope because, that's what pirates do. The gimmick, though, came to an abrupt end when Burchill was decimated by Mark Henry, presumably because Johnny Depp's lawyers had been in touch. To be honest, I had a weird fascination with this gimmick, and let's be honest, it was a whole lot better than the whole shagging his sister stuff that came afterwards. Number 3. Demolition Smash becomes Repo Man. Of course, Simon Miller's favorite ever wrestler was gonna make an appearance in this list. If ever there was an example in professional wrestling of someone being given the moldiest lemons and making perfectly cromulent lemonade, this was it. As part of Demolition, Smash experienced great tag team success, with the duo reigning supreme with the longest WWF Tag Team Championship reign in history. Well, until the New Day came along. When third member Crush was added to the team, though, the writing was on the wall. And that writing, it basically read sod off. Smash would return soon after as Repo Man, the sneakiest of heels who repossessed things from people when they were late on their payments. For some reason, Repo Man dressed as a low-rent Zorro and had tire treads on his gear. Look, Repo Man was a gimmick designed to fail, but Smash performed the persona with such commitment and glee that it kinda worked. And, of course, is Simon Miller's only guilty pleasure, other than heroin. Number 2. One Man Gang becomes Akeem. One Man Gang was a true bad boy upon entering the World Wrestling Federation. A huge man who was tougher than tough and had a tendency to destroy referees after his matches. He dispatched his opponents in double quick time and was quickly built up as a top-level heel for Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage to vanquish. OMG did his job, and he did it well. Which makes it all the more perplexing that he'd be repackaged into bloody this. Akeem the African Dream, was a thing, and he wore a strange yellow parasol type get up to the ring and danced like he was having some sort of seizure. The whole thing was absolutely terrible. Akeem was revealed in a vignette where Mean Gene Okerlund interviewed Slick in a location that was billed as Deepest, Darkest Africa, but was actually an American ghetto. Tribal African dancers moved and chanted around a fire before Akeem appeared and gave a promo in a horribly stereotypical black accent. Yikes. What could be worse than... Number 1. Chavo Guerrero becomes Kerwin White. Right. Chavo Guerrero is a third-generation Mexican-American wrestler and a member of one of the most famous wrestling families in history. He's a multi-time champion too, winning the Cruiserweight Championship 6 times, the tag straps 5 times, and also getting a run as WWE CW champion. Why, oh sodding why then, was Chavo Guerrero repackaged in 2005 as KERWIN White? He denounced his family heritage and decided to follow the Anglo-American way. Essentially a white conservative upper-class guy. He drove a golf cart to the ring and even took on a new catchphrase. The incredibly problematic, if it ain't white, it ain't right. Oh God. Along with his caddy Nick Nemeth, who would go on to become a cheerleader, who would go on to become Dolph Ziggler, White spent a lot of his time running down non-white people and generally being offensive in a suggestive manner. As always, with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. The gimmick was dropped after Eddie Guerrero's tragic death and KERWIN White became Chavo Guerrero once again. And that's our list. Did we miss any out? Let us know in the comment section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And subscribe to What Culture Wrestling on either iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from for daily wrestling podcasts. Plus, you can check out more videos here. Thanks for watching. I've been Adam from What Culture, and I'll see you soon.